Hello there. I'm going to combine two lectures in one, but it's going to be still relatively short. So we're going to talk about the Constitution and federalism first, and then do a little bit of review, basically. Again, this is how your flipped assignment should look. So first of all, using the Constitution in the back of your textbook or online, I think I uploaded a link already yesterday. Look for the following words: federalism, federal, federalist. How many times do you see that word? All right. So the Constitution does create a federal system. The federalism is this compromise between a strong central government and a loose confederation of states. And we've gone over in class and in other lectures how federalism functions. Dual federalism is kind of the old school version of federalism, where both levels of government have dual sovereignty. Both state and national governments function at the same time, over the same people and the same territory, and they have separate but equally important roles. Though some of their roles are concurrent, it is still a federal government. So why is federalism important? Well, the set of interactions between state, national, and local governments really defines everything from how natural disasters are dealt with to what is and is not legal. It decentralizes our politics and our policies. The more layers of government, hypothetically, the more access individuals have to that government. So typically what you hear, like if you want to create change, like you want to propose a law, you talk to the local government first, look into ordinances. If you want to make a bigger change, you go to the state level. If you want to make an even bigger change, then you can call a federal representative. This applies also to how political parties are formed, though that's a kind of a separate thing from federalism, and it gets into what we're going to be talking about in the next unit. Federal and state governments handle different problems. Oops. States regulate drinking age, marriage license, speed limit, education, elections, etc. Most policies begin in states, like the Affordable Health Care system was modeled after a system in Massachusetts, which you might remember Mitt Romney helped implement. California and Texas, but more so California in recent years, has been kind of they call themselves the laboratory for the US, and so new policies are often tried out in places like that, especially California. Just to see how they work and to kind of iron out the kinks before they're eventually adopted by, the federal government to apply to all states. So this idea that states have sovereignty really helps the federal government to see in action laws that Americans are interested in before they implement it themselves at a national level. Article 4 discusses the federal system. Remember, let every judge stand and defend rights. And Article 6 has the Supremacy Clause, which states that the Constitution is supreme over the states. However, the 10th Amendment delegates reserved powers, or it has the delegated and the reserved powers. Those two terms mean the same thing, by the way. Earlier, I think I went on a rant about how expressed, enumerated, and what was the other one? Expressed, enumerated, and constitutional powers are ones that are outlined by the Constitution. Anytime you see the term delegated or reserved, it means the same thing. It's the powers given to states in the 10th Amendment. Lost my train of thought, sorry. But anyway, earlier we were talking about drug legalization, and that there's, on the one hand, the argument that the federal government, under the Supremacy Clause, has the authority to outlaw things like marijuana. On the other hand, healthcare is something that is typically delegated to the states, so legalization of marijuana arguably is a state power. So we'll see what's going to happen with that in the upcoming years. So again, these are clauses that we went over earlier in the week, but you do need to know. These are the 4 clauses that have given significantly contributed to the growth of federal power over the states. So there's the Supremacy Clause, which led to conflict over states' rights and advocated proponents of a strong national government. There's the Commerce Clause, which has been used a lot in everything from marijuana cases like Gonzalez versus Reich to civil rights cases like the Heart of Atlanta Hotel versus the U.S. In Article 1, it states that the power to lay and collect taxes for the common defense and general welfare lie with the Congress. It's the power of the purse. And then the Necessary and Proper Clause is also Article 1. And it creates conflict between a strict and loose construction of the Constitution, and also conflict with the 10th Amendment. What is necessary and proper? When do you defect those authorities to the federal government instead of the states? And strict constitutionalists would argue that the 10th Amendment has more sway than the Necessary and Proper Clause. Loose constructionists of the Constitution would argue that Supremacy Clause and Necessary and Proper Clause together give the federal government more authority. So your second, third, and fourth questions are, how would politics in America be different if we had a unitary system or a confederacy instead of a federal system? And then for review, what does let every judge stand and defend rights stand for? And in what article of the Constitution would you find the amendment process, which outlines the 2 ways that you can amend the Constitution? All right, and then lastly, we'll go over the constitutional basis of federalism. This should just all be review. So, we have dual sovereignty. Again, both state and national governments function at the same time over the same territory, the same people. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18 is the Necessary and Proper Clause, also known as the Elastic Clause. And it caused a lot of drama between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, with the Federalists, especially Alexander Hamilton, claiming it's necessary for the Necessary and Proper Clause to exist, and the Anti-Federalists saying that it goes against the 10th Amendment. And then Article 4, which is the amendment, the States' Rights Clause. It says it's got the full faith and credit clause, the privileges and immunities clause, the extradition clause, and it outlines relations between states. So they have to respect one another's laws. They can't pass laws that infringe on each other's citizens' rights. Full faith and credit is a reference to paying debts. One of the big concerns at the end of the American Revolution was that some states were able to easily pay off their debts and other states were not, especially small states. So the full faith and credit clause says that the United States in general and the states will pay off their debts. And this kind of grants states the right to, put their debts off on the federal government. It's ultimately everyone's role to help. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. With states' payment issues. So like in the European Union, which is a confederacy, states like Greece or Italy have been going bankrupt, and the EU has to bail them out. That wouldn't necessarily happen in the United States because there are other things in place which would allow states to get help if they are in debt. But that's a different rant for a different day. These are 3 of the clauses we've gone over in class, plus the Necessary and Proper Clause or the Elastic Clause. Article 5 is the amendment process, which involves both national and state governments. Article 6 is the Supremacy Clause, which again causes a lot of conflict between states' rights or strict constitutionalists and strong national government or loose constitutionalists. Then there's the 10th Amendment with its delegated and or reserved powers. And then here is a chart of delegated powers on the left, state or reserved powers on the right, and then concurrent powers in the middle. Tomorrow you guys do have a Constitution quiz, so make sure that you know what let every judge stand and defend rights stand for, that you're familiar with some of the clauses. especially the ones in this PowerPoint, and that you know the amendments. All right, I think that's it. I will see you all tomorrow.